of the Lord into the house of the God.
Erev Tov Shavarim, good evening, my friends, and welcome back. It's a delight to be with you again. In episode 2, we establish a basic framework to follow for our ongoing discussions. You'll see it on the screen. Without going into detail, I would like to round out our framework by adding one more element of truth. And that would be the element of our physical bodies and physical truth regarding our diet, holistic medicine, nutrition, and how the Creator has provided within our environment the elements to facilitate and assist our bodies in healing. He's made clear to us what is best for us to eat in our diet. We'll cover what those truths are in more detail and how to apply them in our lives. We will move in and out of these various categories as the topics of discussion warrant. In review, last time we expounded on the existence of a supreme being. Supreme, the definition, ironically, which I find very fascinating and simple, superior to all others. So, El Elyon simply means the Most High God above all others. El Elyon, Elohim, as the creator of all things, we establish a truth here that the condition of the heart of man in some individuals struggles to apprehend and wrap their thoughts around the existence of a creator. However, that's rather arrogant of the creation, us, to question the source from which we derive our very existence. In Isaiah 29, Yeshayahu, verses 13 through 16, and 16 in particular, it says how you turn things upside down. God's talking to us here. Is the potter better than the clay? Does something made say of its maker, "He didn't make me"? Does the product say of its producer, "He has no discernment"? We also acknowledge that evil exists. A harsh reality for some people to really come to terms with. I'm just reminded of the movie with Jack Nicholson where he says, "You can't handle the truth." Well, I think the days are upon us where we're not going to have a choice, or else we'll go blindly forward, ignoring and denying what's happening in our midst. Just look at the daily atrocities that occur in our world on a daily basis. That evil came into being through the act of disobedience by the archangel Lucifer. He had free choice. He chose not to fulfill the purpose for which he was created. He chose to go his own way. As a result of that, he took a third of the angels of heaven and wreaked havoc on the lives of humankind. Those who, knowing and perhaps not knowing, give him a legal position to wreak havoc in their lives. That's why it's important to know the scriptures. We find in Isaiah 45, verses 4 through 20, that it describes the fall of Lucifer. It says in verse 12, "How did you come to fall from the heavens, morning star, son of the dawn? How did you come to be cut to the ground, conqueror of nations. You thought to yourself, I will scale the heavens. I will raise my throne above God's stars. I will sit on the Mount of Assembly, far away in the north. I will rise past the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Instead, you are brought down to Sheol, which is hell, to the uttermost depths of the pit. Beloved, that is probably the most complete description of pride and arrogance. And that's where his fall took place. We have to be mindful of that in our own lives. Out of this, we recognize that there are two primary elements operating in the universe. Those driven by love, which is God, and those by fear, which is the evil one. They serve as focal points by which the world of humankind really turns on or acts or reacts to. They say that fear is the currency of control. Thank goodness we have a loving Creator, Elohim, who loves us, and we have the contrast that we can see the difference. Once we act or react, we then have to appropriate, draw on our natural faculties of touch, taste, smell, hear, and see as we process them through our spirit, our mind, and our emotions, so that we can discern the origin of the powers that are at work around us and that are impacting our lives. Let's face it, when we're interacting with another person, we hear them, we see them, we sense, our emotions process what we're experiencing, good or bad. So it's really important that our senses are refined. And the question is, how do we do that? So as we move forward today, I would like to expand our focus on the topic of personal truth, because I believe the elements of our spirit, mind, emotions, and our physical bodies, that all surrounds our personal truth, knowing who we are. We need to in order to effectively function in the real world, the natural realm. The real world. Well, I'd like to refer back to again the definition of what's real. Real means actually existing as a thing or occurring in fact. It's not imagined or supposed. So, if there's evil in the world, and I see evil taking place, and I turn a blind eye to it, I'm not dealing with the real world. So it's important that as we develop our faculties, our senses, and our spirit and our mind and our emotions, and we integrate what our physical body is transmitting to us. As I mentioned in episode 1, the objective here is that we understand where the origin of what we're experiencing is coming from. Because once we know that, then we can act appropriately. As I mentioned in episode 1, all things that we go through in life, all the challenges, the troubles, or the blessings, originate in the spiritual realm, or as I've referred to as the unseen realm. In John 4:19-24, Hashem, through the rabbi, teacher, prophet Yeshua, directed his followers not to him, but to the Father. This is what he said in Yochanan, the Gospel, chapter 4, verse 23. But the time is coming, indeed, it's here now, when the true worshipers will worship the Father spiritually and truly, for these are the kind of people the Father wants worshiping him. Remember, God is spirit, and worshipers must worship him spiritually and truly. To my Jewish mishpachah, we are told not to disparage a rabbi, a sage, or a teacher, but to honor them. Regardless of who you may think Yeshua was, is, or is not, I really think we need to take a step back and focus in on what matters here. Do we want truth? Do we want to know the truth? Because truth is not a respecter of persons. So, if truth can come forth from an ass and completely redirect the course of Balaam and the fate of our people, then if we are truly seeking truth, we won't get distracted from the instrument through which that truth is delivered to us. Simply, we will focus in on the truth. I like to illustrate the example of Moshe. Hashem revealed himself to Moshe when Moshe inquired of Hashem what his name was. And we all know that Hashem is the essence and embodiment of all truth. So as Moshe asks what he's to say when he goes back to Egypt, the name of the God who sent him, Hashem responded by saying, "Tell them that I am that I am." And I see that truth is kind of a mirror image of that, as in, truth is that it is. In other words, truth is just truth. So, in order to overcome and conquer the situations we encounter on a regular basis, we must become familiar with our own faculties. What are the components that comprise of who we are, as in, know thyself? Let's construct the fundamental components together. We know we have a physical, corporeal body. That's easy. That's real. Just look in the mirror. We come in all shapes, sizes, and appearances. We have 5 senses: touch, taste, smell, hear, and see. We also have a soul. I would like to break that down a little further. Our souls are comprised of our emotions, which is a broad spectrum of feelings. It consists of our mind. That's our capacity to think and reason logically. If we would only possess these 2 attributes, we'd all just be basic like any other animal. Unfortunately, evolutionists seem to want to minimize the very value that we place upon mankind, on the marvelous awesomeness of the creation of man, who was created in Hashem's image. Gee, I wonder where that idea came from. See, what sets us apart from all the other creatures is we have a spirit, a God-breathed spirit. In Hebrew, it's neshama. The third element is the spirit, the neshama, and that's where our conscience resides. That's where our moral compass resides. Our intuition. It's where our instincts sense something intangible taking place around us, or warning us to not proceed in a direction, or it evolves. Do you ever get a sense that you shouldn't go a certain way to a destination that you're headed towards? Just something inside you says, I'm not going to go that way today. So it's our spiritual senses, our intuition. And then there's our will. Taking everything into consideration, this is often referred to as the spirit, soul, and body. You find this ironically and interestingly on many seals of cities, states, and universities. Just as a newborn infant is unaware of all its faculties and requires a diaper and to be changed and to be nurtured, but eventually they grow out of it. They get potty trained, and they're now able to manage that part of their physical makeup and become masters of those bodily functions. We too, as we mature and grow in other areas of our life, and particularly spiritually and emotionally, mentally, we need to become masters of all the faculties that Hashem has endowed us with. Those within our body, emotions, mind, and spirit. The Apostle Paul speaks of the progress. He speaks of how we progress in that area. In 1 Corinthians 13, chapter 13, 11 to 13, it's ironic that the chapter which Paul points to this in is the well-known chapter of love. It says in verse 12, verse 11, I apologize. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, thought like a child, argued like a child, and now that I've become a man, I have finished with childish ways. For now we see obscurely in a mirror, but then it will be face to face. Now I know partly, then I will know fully, just as God has fully known me. But for now, 3 things last: trust, hope, love. And the greatest of these is love. Let's face it, at our core, we are spiritual beings. It is our spirits that contain the life in us, and it's that which animates us. Pardon me, we have a little visitor here. It's Milo. So, when we die, that essence, that animation disappears, like pulling the plug and cutting off the electricity. The truth is, we existed before we entered into this physical realm, as illustrated in the prophet Jeremiah's life at the beginning of his calling as a prophet to Israel, in Jeremiah 1, 4 and 5. If Hashem knew Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, sound reason tells us he knew us as well. That being the case, we're more than simple biological masses that magically, theoretically emerge from some conjured up primordial ooze. If that's where you think you came from, I question in the depth of your personal transparency. When you're alone and idle, pondering your life, as the blessed King David wrote, the bedrock of our self-worth is found in the knowledge of Psalm 139, 13 through 18. The whole chapter is excellent, but this focuses in on what we're addressing here. It says, "For you fashioned my inmost beings. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I thank you because I'm awesomely made, wonderfully. Your works are wonders. I know this very well. My bones were not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes could see me as an embryo, but in your book all my days were already written. My days had been shaped before any of them existed. God, how I prize your thoughts, how many of them there are. If I count them, there are more than grains of sand. If I finish the count, I'm still with you. You see, we're more than just something to feed, something to be stimulated, or someone who excels and carries out our daily tasks and achieves. Achieves for what? Self-gratification? We all have to examine our hearts. We must know who we are. We need to have an honest and true assessment of who we are before our Creator. The Torah tells us who we are. If we don't search the scriptures, the Torah, to understand how the Creator sees us, if we don't know each part of that which comprises of who we are, if we don't understand its role and purpose and function in our makeup, if we don't develop it, train it, allow Hashem to refine it and transform it into His image, in whose image we're created in. You see, when we fell, we were greatly damaged. And our life is a process of being nurtured and built up and trained. And as we become self-sufficient and able, our life's journey, as we connect with our Creator, with Hashem, is to allow Him to transform us, to restore us back to the fullness of what He originally intended us to be. But if you don't know yourself, and if you don't even know and understand the individual elements of how they function, and how when combined, how they make you who you are, you're lost. You're just drifting wherever the current of life carries you. You see, when you discover and know thyself, it is then that you can begin to marvel at how miraculously and wonderfully the Creator has made you. And as you marvel, you can begin to humbly love yourself in gratitude and thanksgiving towards your Creator and Judge, Elohim. It's then that you'll be compelled to live and walk out the three fundamental purposes for which we were all created. See, we were created to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and might, as written in Devarim, Deuteronomy 6:4-9. See, once you love God and you are given that sense of self-worth as a result of understanding how God sees you and how He defines who you are, not the world, not your friends, not your career, not your importance, influence, or popularity. No, what matters is that what Hashem thinks of you. He tells us in the Torah all the time. Goodness, He loves us. He's the essence of love. So once we understand who we are and who our God is, then we can begin to love our neighbor as ourselves, because we love ourselves first, because that love has been given to us, because the Creator has expressed his love towards us to show us that he loves us and how important we are. And like all of us, when someone makes you feel important, you feel good about yourself. You love yourself. And you're happy. And then that spills over and out into other relationships and interactions with people. You can love them despite their imperfections. And lastly, we need to understand what the whole purpose of why we're here. We can find that in Ecclesiastes 12, chapter 12, verse 13. See, at the end of King Solomon's life, after having experienced everything imaginable, having all his desires and wishes and wealth, he comes to this conclusion. Remember, we were created in the image of God. He says, here is the final conclusion. Now that you have heard everything, experienced everything, fear God and keep his mitzvot, his commandments. Wow. Wow. This is what being human is all about. For God will bring to judgment everything we do, including every secret, whether good or bad. Beloved, the essence of who Hashem is, our Elohim, is embodied in the Torah. Okay? We become transformed into his image that we had been damaged by immersing ourselves in the Torah, by understanding his commandments and how they apply today. Every generation has to redefine them and apply them in their modern world. Okay? So, beloved, the essence of Hashem, our Elohim, is embodied in the Torah, and everything flows from it. It's our core strength. For the Christian, beloved, if you don't understand the Torah in its Jewish, literal, cultural, and historical context, you won't fully understand the words in the Gospels and the Epistles. And that's because the writers of the Gospel and Epistles were expounding on the Torah. It's all they had. There were no Gospels and Epistles. They were just being written. But the context and the reference point from what they were being written out of was the Torah. See, there's over 1,500 verses in the Gospels and Epistles that have their origin in the Torah. A good example is, man shall not live by bread alone, or give us this day our daily bread. It's right out of the Torah. You see, the mitzvot and the commandments have not passed away. It is the light that lights our path. To sum the Torah up in one word, it outlines Hashem's will for our lives. And in one word, the Torah is simply boundaries. They're boundaries that instruct us on how we're to relate to our God, El Elyon, and they're boundaries on how we relate to one another and how we love our neighbor. The reality is, as we stand naked before our Creator, alone in the stillness of our room, we must know who He is. We need to yield and surrender our lives to His assessment of who we are as He shines His light and as He is the light upon us as revealed in the Torah. Then we will truly have a realistic understanding of who He is and who we are, And we'll be able to know ourselves, to know thyself, to love ourselves, to genuinely love others, and be equipped to take on the challenges that we're faced with in life. In closing, I would like to refer back to what our senior Rebbe Aharon Baruch ben Herschel of Beit Torah said. Without truth, faith in human beings then would be rare. Friendships would then disappear. The very existence of society then would start to crumble. Beloved, if I'm in a relationship with you and I cannot be confident or assured that you're being genuinely honest with me, that the words you're expressing to me are true, if I can't count on your transparency and genuineness and that your word is true, relationship falls apart. Eventually it will just dissolve and disintegrate. So, do you see how important being truthful with one another is? In our work, in our friendships, in our marriages, everything. You see, the foundation of this world that God set up in His Torah for people deals with truth, justice, and peace. That's what we have to aim for. See, if we remove truth, then you're undermining one of the very pillars of the world. In the words of the prophet Zechariah, chapter 8, verse 19, love the truth. Truth is basically the seal of God. It is the heart of life. Without truth, no word has value. There's no character and there's no respect. With that, in our next episode, I'm going to expound on, once we know ourselves and we understand all the elements that are operating and comprising of who we are, now we need to know the structures, the power structures in the unseen realm, how they're set up, the authority, and where we fit in to that structure. And in light of our makeup, what are the boundaries and what access does the evil one have in us? And how do we deal with it? There are some things that are out of bounds for him. As a matter of fact, if you look at the example of Job, I'll close with this. There's nothing, if you have given your heart, soul, and strength to Hashem, to the creator of the universe, you're in his hands. The evil one cannot touch you without first, as he did with Job, getting permission from the creator of all things. So be encouraged and rest assured. He's got you in the palm of his hands, and he's got his eye on you. Whatever it is you're going through, it's going to be all right. He wrote the last chapter, and fear not. So, with that, I'll conclude our discussion. Feel free to email me if you have any questions on this or any previous topics, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. I know I will learn a lot. and I hope you will too. I want to thank you for joining me. If you find our discussion and the information in this episode helpful, please click on the likes. If you benefit from our discussions and would like to support the work that we're doing here, click on PayPal and send whatever contribution you're able to. I'm sincerely grateful and appreciate it very much. Thank you. And last, if you like what we're producing here, become a regular subscriber and automatically receive each episode as they're released. I look forward to continuing our weekly discussions on seeking the truth and walking down that path that the sages have called the straight and narrow way. Shevarim, we're closing in on the end of the 11th hour. Keep your fire pans burning, your oil lamps supplied with sufficient oil. Then look up, for your redemption draws near. I'm Assistant Rabbi Moshe Boger of Beit Torah. Shevarim, Baruch Hashem. Shalom, shalom. See you in the plan. Laila Tov. Good night.